what I keep hearing about CRED myself. There are people out there who absolutely love the product, but I also have people in my network who absolutely hate the product.
UX is knowledge. You can learn it through books, you can work on some years and you'll understand it. It takes a far lesser amount of time to get a good understanding, but UI on the other hand is pure craft. It's a taste that you develop over a long period of time.
What's the point of all these CRED coins?
मैं जा रहा हूँ. Yeah, I mean, if Bangalore police ever stops me and looks at my WhatsApp to find something, I'm in the jail, bro. I'm not coming out anytime soon.
So Atul, I keep seeing posts on social media about DesignDrug. And DesignDrug is a community by you, I guess. I want to know more about it. What are you trying to achieve with this?
So I think DesignDrug was something that was a college brainchild. I always wanted something to do with branding and to have like a own space around it. But again, then I think life happened. There was so much work, so it kind of was on a still. And then I had a small cohort that I was teaching during COVID. That was my own journey of being good at the whole idea of sharing knowledge. And then when I launched my website, I had this one section which had multiple links to go to different social spaces, but I had one slot less. It was not balancing. So I thought I'll just put this Discord channel link there just to balance out the composition. And then when the website went out, it got a certain amount of attention. And it had 30 people to start with, which were from the previous cohort. And suddenly people started clicking on it. So over the weekend, it had around 2,000 designers in that Discord channel. And they're all curiously, wait, what do we do here? And at first I thought if I don't say anything, maybe this whole chorus will kind of die and I won't have to attend to it. But then one of my previous mentees, a very dear friend, Tejas, he just went out there and said, oh yeah, we do really cool things here. So then I was stuck. Then like, shit, ab to baat karna padega. So I think over the week, next week, then I discussed it with two other very close friends of mine, Varenya and Malik. Malik was a mentor who got me transitioned from graphics to product. So I discussed with them and they were like, we are game, let's go ahead and do this. And I think that's when we started making this community about helping people in a space. When I joined, I didn't have a lot of guidance. And I realized the value that Malik brought into my career by guiding me through this. So I wanted to be that person for a lot more people. And that's how DesignDrug started, and it's going that way. I think we keep on coming up with new ideas in terms of helping people. We identify gaps that we see in the current industry. Even when I'm involved in hiring at my companies, I see some gaps which I feel like could be done better if we kind of help out people in that. So that's how Build came into existence. And I think that's how now Guild is coming into existence. So we keep on making different frameworks, but it's mostly done out of interest. I think I've realized over time that most of the things that I design, they have a certain shelf life. Even though they are good, they might sustain for a 3 or 4 year gap or something, but beyond a time they cease to exist. A new problem arises, or there's an improvised version that needs to exist. So whatever I create doesn't have a long shelf life. But this is something that I wanted to create and I wanted to live long. It can stay alive as long as I want it to be.
Why the name DesignDrug?
Interesting. I think it's actually funny. When I was in college, I started with the name Graphic Geeks. And over time, I realized how not cool it was. Like a lot of other things I used to do in college. And I think that's when we wanted to do something different. And I looked for a lot of different, I think back in the day, if I had to find a brand name, I would do like a lot of things together, like Google and find synonyms and all of that stuff. I think that's when DesignDrug kind of stuck. It was kind of controversial. It just had the right balance. Like it's something that if you hear it once, you'd want to see at least a few levels inside what this is about. It had the right catchy brand name to itself. And I think I also loved the branding that we came up with. It had like a pill that forms out of 2Ds. So it just felt right. And I think it has been around 8 years since then. It still feels like it's a good brand name to have. So happy about it.
Interesting. I don't know about the balance part, but it definitely made me curious when I first heard about it. And it's definitely catchy.
Yeah, I mean, if Bangalore police ever stops me and looks at my WhatsApp to find something, I'm in the jail, bro. I'm not coming out anytime soon.
You also mentioned frameworks like Build and Guild
Right.
as part of DesignDrug. Can you share more about what are those frameworks and how you came up with them?
Right. I think I'll start with Build. Now, Build was actually a solution to a gap in the industry that we were witnessing for a long time. I think over time what happened was product design as an industry, as a space, it has multiple parts that come together to form or to create a very good product designer. It goes from understanding of user experience to the craft of user interface design and to the idea of how to make these things work together through interaction design. Now, if you have seen on LinkedIn, I think there is this whole curve of everyone becoming a designer, where at one point, this thing comes around UI versus UX. And you see a lot of stupid posts around that, people vote about this or that. And we eventually realized that UX is knowledge. You can learn it through books, you can work on some years and you'll understand it. It takes a far lesser amount of time to get a good understanding enough to get started in the field. But UI, on the other hand, is pure craft. It's a taste that you develop over a long period of time. And people who are artists since they were kids, they have this because it's ingrained in them. They have done this. They are those kids in a class, those 3 people who every time are called out if there's a drawing competition, these 3 people will go out of the class and they'll do that stuff. So design for the longest time, until it was a very high paying field, only these people used to get in and actually create for things. But now, since people are finding it, as a very lucrative job, there's a lot of money in there. A lot of people are getting in. But these people are very much relying on the knowledge and not on the craftsmanship that comes with this role. And at one point, every person makes a call, right? I'm trying, it's not happening. Now, do I call this? Do I put more effort into this? Do I accept that I'm not able to grab this, or do I shit on it? And I think that's when the whole UI versus UX thing came in, where people started shitting on UI skills, saying that this is more important. But what people fail to realize is it's not 2 ends of a string. Like, if this is better, that doesn't mean this has to be bad. Like, these are 2 different graphs. A very functional product doesn't have to look shitty. A very beautiful product doesn't have to be bad at functionality. Both of these things are different things that come together to make a good product. And that's what we wanted to kind of, double down on. So we said that it's okay if you're coming into a field where you don't have the craft, but craft can be built. If you hammer on it day in, day out, you will get better at it, but you'll have to put in the work. So we didn't want people to rely on shitting on it. We wanted to give them a space a way to be good at it. And that's when build came in. I think every industry has this gatekeeping part that comes at a certain point, but at least there's a part of us who's kind of trying to open the doors as wide as we can. So yeah, that's what build is.
Very interesting. When you talked about people putting it out there, all their learnings for 100 days consistently.
Right.
That's more like learn in public, right?
Yes, grow in public.
Learn in public, grow in public. Interestingly, I got to know about one of our designers participating in that through Learn in Public initiative. So actually, I saw it on LinkedIn, and that's when we realized, okay, she's participating in it. And we had a chat, and she had a lot of good words to say. One point that you made about UI versus UX, I do not think a lot of people understand that. UI is craftsmanship, and it takes a lot of time and requires real hard work consistently. And you start, over time you build intuition for it. What is good UI versus what is not. I think something similar happens with UX also.
Right.
But some of what you just said probably comes from your experience at CRED, where I think every time I talk to someone from CRED, they focus a lot more on the craftsmanship part of design, how everything comes together, how UI and UX are probably not that, separate from each other. They are integrated. So I would love to know more about your perspective on design from CRED lens.
Right. I think, to be honest, I don't think, so what you said, right? We focus more on UI, less on UX. I think that is something that I've heard of, this perception a lot that comes out. But I feel like CRED is one of those companies that actually cares a lot about what the product that comes out, right? I've heard a lot of product owners say that, wow, this feature is so cool. And for some reason, they are very much focused on the functionality of it. Like, what can it give out of me? But a product is not just functionality. It's not just looks either. All these three multiple different orbs have to come together to become a great experience. Like for a user, they never look at something and they say ki UI acha nahi hai, but UX better hai. For them, it's like ye hai jo bhi hai.
Yeah.
For them, it's a amalgamation of all of those things coming together.
How they feel and what they get out of it, both are important.
But they are never thinking about these three different things. All they are looking at is a product and how it, if it does the job that they're looking for and how do they feel during that experience.
Yeah.
Now, you can go into an app and just kind of, get what you want out of it, but you'll forget about it. Like, we use a lot of products on a daily basis. We just get the job done and we don't think about it anymore. And I think that's what a lot of these attempts were to make it successful, like the whole material guideline, Apple human interface guidelines. They came out because they said that the bar is too low. People are creating random shit. There has to be some structure to it. And that created a normal, let's say, a sky like this, right? Clouds. Now, you're not looking out there and feeling like, oh, what a beautiful sky every single day, because it's just bland. It mixes up with everything.
Yeah.
But if you see northern lights, you're going to sit and you're going to just look at it for an hour, right? Because it's beautiful. So another goal of product is to be memorable. You don't want to be another cloud in the sky which no one notices. You want to be noticeable. You want to be remembered. And I think that's what CRED achieved. It created a product that was functional, which did everything you wanted for. But it also had the visual power to grab your attention and be like, no, look at me, remember me, and I am the next product you'll use again. Like, if there are people who... So this is something that I've realized over time, that if your designs are creating extreme reactions in terms of people either loving it or people hating it, you're doing something right. If no one's talking about you, then you are in a pretty much not so great position, because that means no one really cares. So even if people have come out and said, oh, you know what, your UI is good but UX is bad, that means this person firstly took the amount of time to notice it to that depth.
Yeah.
Then they gave a fuck about it enough to go to Twitter and shit about it.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's not a bad thing if you are grabbing that kind of attention, because there's so many products out there that either have neither of these. No one really wants to talk about it either. So I think you're in a good space if you're doing that.
So you are saying it's okay if people hate your product, because it has to drive reactions. People should either love your product or hate your product, but if people are going ahead and talking about it, that means you have taken certain decisions which people pay attention to, and it matters. Which brings me to what I keep hearing about CRED myself. There are people out there who absolutely love the product, but I also have people in my network who absolutely hate the product. They literally say it's the most useless product out there. They just can't get to the core of it. Like, they want to just do the payment and be done with it, but they have to go through all these all these animations, all these extra flows. What do you think about that?
Right. I think firstly I would like to say, like, ideally would love if everyone just loves us and there's no hate. I mean, ideally I think any entity would love that. But I think I'm cognizant of the fact that the other polarizing, cohort exists. And I think that's always going to be there, right? I mean, something like there's always going to be people who have an aesthetic taste towards things. They'll always appreciate things that are made in a certain way. Like this whole setup, right? Now, this is a beautiful neon sign, right? It looks nice. The font is amazing. Like, I, as a person who have certain tastes in terms of aesthetics, I'll go ahead and I'll appreciate it, because that's the first thing I saw. I absolutely loved it, even when it was not lit. But that comes from my aesthetic sense.
Yes.
There will always be someone who would say ki kyun kharcha karna, ek wo sticker chipka dete ho jata. So that janta exists and it's okay. Like, but a brand will not solve for everyone. And I think CRED has been very specific about that from day one. They only cater to the top 1% of India, right? You have a credit score above a certain amount. And I think they're doing that job. And this cohort, maybe they will find people who are maybe not very visually driven. They don't like too much flair around things. And yeah, they exist. It's okay. But that will not make, a brand change the way they do things. There's certain thing they're trying to solve for, and there's a certain style that they're trying to conquer. But I don't think that opinion really matters.
Don't get me wrong, by the way. I think CRED is very well designed product. And like you said, it's probably because of my aesthetic sense. But one thing that I have noticed and I really like is there is there is a bit of negativity around, some of the decisions that you guys have taken in terms of product design. But you guys have stood the ground. Like, you haven't changed much. You had your set of principles that you stuck to, despite all the, all the negative feedback sometimes here and there. That's something I actually really like, because I don't think many companies can do that.
Right. I think that is solely possible because of Harish Bhai and the kind of place he holds in CRED and his whole partnership with Kunal. I think, so I've worked in companies, and the designers that you'll find at CRED, they come from different companies, Myntra, CureFit, like so many different companies, right? But somehow, even though they were great designers then, they were able to do the best work so far here because the environment supports that. Like, because Harish Bhai himself is so creative and the way he thinks is very different from what a normal person will think about. Like, I know that in the past 3 years, I have grown so much in terms of how I look at design, how I feel about design, how I express my designs out there, is because it comes from top down. There's so many challenges, so many battles that we don't have to fight because we know that he's out there doing that for us. And I think normal companies have a head of design or some sorts who will actually report to the product head in the end. And it gives us so much power in this space to someone else who's not even aware of how this function even works.
Yes.
But at CRED, we have a CDO. Like, Bhai is a CDO, right? So when you sit at that level, I know that he has so much influence over the system that we can do really radical stuff because we have someone who understands us at that level. And there is so much trust in what he does amongst other people who are shareholders that things go through. So I can do so many radical things here, and they will actually see the day of the light, which were not even conversations I could have in my previous career. So I think it's all hats off to them because of which this is possible.
Very interesting. Because you said Harish Bhai is the CDO. You have such a different environment for designers, so much of flexibility, so much of freedom. I wanted to ask, does it mean PMs at CRED finally report to the head of design? Like, how is it structured?
No, I think there's a product owner as well who handles all that. I think Kunal himself is very much involved in product. So it's not like product designers report to Harish Bhai. But I think in any company that I've seen in the past, so I can recognize companies now. There are companies who would say that this is a design first company, but even then you know that the control lies with another function. Like, there are previously companies that I worked at that I know they are more product manager focused companies because it's them who kind of have a lot of control on the system. CRED is, I think, one of the truest design first companies because yahan pe envisioning things, a lot of things happen on this space itself. It kind of brings a lot of responsibility along with it, this whole control that you have. So I think for us at CRED, whenever there is a project that is shared with us, I think we have to think about a lot of things that I think in my previous companies, I would feel like a lot of the work was already done and given to me on a platter, and I would take it forward from there. But in a company like this, where you know that, it's this, your function is playing a major role, you get to kind of solve for a lot of those parts as well. So things are not always untangled and given to you. You have to sometimes untangle it yourself. And I think that kind of gives you that power in terms of defining the what as well. Like, you don't want to create an awesome solution for the wrong problem. So defining the problem is a part that you get a lot of control onto. Like, I think in the early stages of every designer's career, this happens a lot. Someone brings a problem to you and you just start solving for it. And somewhere around the end, you realize that this person was trying to solve something. And that's what they derived the problem out of. But sometimes it's not the right problem to be driven out in the first place. So all of that goes down the drain. But I think when you're given so much control, you ask the right questions, you make sure that you're solving for the right problem in the first go. So your journey as a designer starts at multiple folds ahead than it previously used to. So I think when you have so much indulgement in the whole problem, you end up creating something far more impactful.
When you say your involvement is a lot more in solving the problem at CRED compared to previous companies, are you hinting at the collaboration between design and product in different companies? What role product played in previous companies versus at CRED? Can Can you say more about what changed?
So I think without going like particular to any company, I think a small example that can justify this is something as simple as let's do Garbad, right? Let's say the PM at Garbad comes and says that, hey, I want to create 4 banners around this summer campaign. Now, that is what a usual structure of work coming to you would look like in a normal company. At CRED, they would be like, hey, we wanted to solve for retention at this place. We want to get more users in. We want to onboard more users. What can we do? So you are at the, literally that, base of the problem rather than working on someone's solution to a problem. And I think that access is very powerful because, again, it's just like jamming on an idea. You get to know a lot more perspectives. You get to kind of, ping pong the idea and see where it breaks. So I think when you're at the base, you can come with a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's a great difference between a designer and a PM. One person thinks a lot about core functionality, users and everything. Other person thinks about all of those things, but they also have great insight into ideation, what's the current trend going on, what works out in the spaces as well. So I think when you are at the heart of the problem, you can solve for it in a lot more creative way. I think that's the access that you get here at CRED.
There is a beautiful equation on your website on what creates a timeless product. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so I think I would like to thank 2 of my college friends for this. I remember how this worked. So I was making the first version of my website, and I think I'm still in cult. Actually, I was about to join CRED that point in time, and I just wanted to have a website. It's like, people say that we as designers, we create products and digital websites and stuff, but khud ka kabhi nahi ban pata because it's the hardest. Like, you feel like this represents you, but the 1 month later, like, no, it doesn't. And usually it takes longer than that to create your own website. You have the whole working hours and everything. So I used to take out like 30 minutes, 1 hour every day in the morning and just do some part of it. Warm up hote, it would take 30 minutes and then you're like, oh shit. So I would do this over like span of 4-5 months. And within 2 months, I would start feeling ki kya kach raha hai, this is not me. So it's a very fuck all process to create your own representation digitally.
That's how all designers...
Yeah, that's why most of us don't have a website.
Yeah, and all of them are creating their portfolio website throughout their life.
Yes.
Always at it, consistently.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of updating my website is like, I don't think I can ever update it. I'll have to redo it. Like the moment you open it and you're like, ye to ab nahi chamak raha, like I have to redo the whole thing again. So I think that's why it has so much friction in it. But I think it's a great way to express yourself. I think it's a piece of art rather than more of information. Like, I think that's what visiting cards have turned now. Like, no one has a visiting card anymore for information. If you have it, you're creating some kind of impact through it. Like, it has to be so attention grabbing. So it's not about those few information because wo to aapko LinkedIn pe mil jayega.
Yeah.
It's like when you give it, it becomes memorable. So I think all these experiences are turning more into something more memorable than just solving for the base functionality of giving information.
What about the equation?
Oh yeah, the equation. Sorry, I got drifted.
It's okay.
So I think I was, so there are these 2 friends of mine. I was in NIFT Bombay, so they were my batchmates back then. And both of them I find have epic humor. It's Shweta and Snehal. So we're just sitting out in the night and I was like, you know what, I want to make some copy. I want it to be fun and I want to jam with you guys. And it was more of them than me. But that's when we came up with this equation. So I think it's the equation was beautiful UI plus efficient UX plus delightful interactions leads to a timeless product. And I think we just came up with then, it was like, this is so cool. And I think even the part which said, I suck at maths is something that we came up with together. So I think it all came together as this whole thing that I suck at maths, but there's one equation I never get wrong. And then this equation came in. And I think me sucking at maths was very evident throughout my education. So I think it kind of became a very personal introduction to it.
What's the point of all these CRED coins?
Interesting. मैं जा रहा हूँ. No, I think so. The coin ecosystem is something that keeps this whole gamification chain running. Like you earn certain coins when you pay your bills, pay your like all your utilities and everything. And then there is a way and a structure to burn this and get something out of it. There's CRED store, certain things that are meant to drive you in to try something out. And after that, the core value of the product is not that extrinsic value or that extrinsic motivation, but what it brings intrinsically. people used to crib a lot about Pehle Google Pay. When I used to pay transactions, I used to get so much cashback. Now I don't. The value of Google Pay is not the cashback that you get. The value of Google Pay is you don't carry your wallets anymore. तुम जाके छुट्टे नहीं कर रहे होते, निकाल रहे हो, तुम सीधा स्कैन करके पेमेंट कर देते हो ऑटो पे जब जाते हो तो.
Yeah.
That is the value of the product. एक ऐप के अंदर you are paying 7 different credit card bills in a single click rather than going to different websites, and you know the experience is subpar there.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to, and again, I understand as a human why you end up looking at that rather than the real value. But trust me, in a couple of years, people do understand. Like if I take it away and I tell you to survive by paying 7 different bills, you know that value. The thing is, products won't do that. And we are like, no matter where I put you, right, you'll always find some flaws in it. Beauty ka problem where the more you get used to it, you try to find problems. Like, Varenya was my flatmate and a good friend. He says this, that if you have roti, kapda, makan sorted, you have 1,000 other problems. If you don't have that, you only have these 3 problems. So when the world becomes nice for you, then you'll start finding even the smallest flaws and they'll affect you. So I think that's a never-ending journey. And I think that should be there. That pushes people to grow further. Like, I think there's this very nice quote that I love from Ford. It's like, if we asked people what they want, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
So people have to innovate. And for that, they need to see problems. They need to find problems. So even if people are trying to find problem here, I'm sure it will lead to some great, innovation around this. And this will be solved in a certain amount of time. But it's important for people to criticize too.
Moving on, one more thing I wanted to know more about, and I think our audience would be very interested in, is the overall hiring approach at CRED. So maybe we can just talk about what do you look for when you hire at CRED for design roles, product roles, anything related to the whole product building side of things.
Right. I think I'm involved in the product design hiring part, so I can talk about that. I think design in general is one space where no one gives a flying fuck if you're from, how old you are, color, caste, creed, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is your proof of work. Like, is your work amazing? And that amazing is relative. Like, if you know about these novel practices as bar raisers, right?
Yeah.
So any new person coming in has to be 50% janta se better that already exists in the system. So the lookout is always like, is this person's work amazing? That is one, and that's when the initial filtering starts happening. Post that, I think one thing that Arish Bhai has somehow been able to crack, and I think he's known for that, he makes amazing teams wherever he goes, is like he has gotten the most talented people in the team, but they're also great humans. So that way we have this close-knit group of, a very big group of almost 40-50 designers. All of them are amazing at what they do, and they're also great people to hang out with. And I think that's what creates this bond so well between team members. And I think that's what we always look out for. Like, is your work amazing? And if you are, great as a person. Like, there are people who I have completely experience working with who are great at what they do, but they're not amazing people. They're not good people. So I think it's a no asshole policy. Again, not quite right, but it's something that I usually apply for that. If I have to work with someone, if I have to spend 8 hours of my most focused hours of my day with someone, they have to be people who I really, I can actually have a good conversation with. I can work with them as well. You don't want someone who kind of comes and ruins that whole experience of a team. So I think these are 2 factors that we really look into. And post that, I think none of that matters. I think, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And particularly when teams become larger, you definitely do not want to ruin the experience of everyone just by having one such person in the team. So I think this balance is very, very important. Not just at large teams, I would say, even at small teams like Airtribe. We have to be very particular, whether it's skill set and how good they are as a person, whether there is a good balance or not.
Right. And I think this, even I have realized, sometimes you don't have that liberty in the very initial phase of your company. But I think luckily what works for CRED is it's also aspirational for designers. So we have the liberty to choose and pick from. But there was a point in time when it was just starting off, like before CRED was CRED. I think even then, I think I was able to pull in such great people who made what CRED is. I joined it much after it was already established. So even at that stage, finding the right people, I think was, for me, I have no idea how we did it. but I think he has done a great job in that so far.
If I had to ask you, what's the most impressive design project you have been a part of, where you had to play a central role? What would that be?
Right. I think I cannot go into the details of it, but I think in most of the projects that I've worked at CRED, I was able to push my boundaries beyond the core role that I would do. So even if it came to gamification, I think it was not something that was served to me. I had to go out, and I think I learned a lot of great things. I think Octalysis as a gamification framework is something that I had to deeply study to crack that human psychology in terms of, how to create certain experiments. So I think it always pushed me to go beyond what I could corely do sit in design screens. I had to go and figure out the human motivations as well. There were times where I had to fix for problems that were beyond the design domain. I had to get into certain amount of operations and this, I think, and all of these things, like when you understand the whole orb of how a machine works, I think you become more in control and power of that. So I think I had a lot of these opportunities to kind of dive into at CRED.
Got it. So you are not going to talk about the
I can't do that
project. Okay, got it. Thanks a lot, Atul, for coming to the podcast. It was really great having you here and hearing your perspectives. And it's a very nice shirt, by the way.
I could say the same for you, man. Good shirt.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me here.